beginning of November, Monica and I decided that we would head up to New England and visit some of our friends and spend a little bit of a long weekend because she had some extra time off. So we drove through the middle of Pennsylvania to get up to the Boston area where we stayed with one of our friends. We usually don't see this part of Pennsylvania. It's really pretty and we had some good foliage. We were lucky enough to drive through the area of Punxsutawney very briefly, and when it got dark we saw these meteor showers, which was really cool. We were close to the Grand Canyon of Pennsylvania, and the Starbucks unfortunately was closed, which was a super bummer for us. We tried to make the drive all in one day, but we did have to stop overnight and stay at a place in Connecticut, but here we are driving over this gorgeous bridge into Haverhill, Mass to stay with our friend Marcie from YouTube. Because our first day was a short one, we drove to Salem to explore because it was not very far away from where we were staying, and we just walked around Salem and took the sights in. This hot dog place was amazing. We got the Perro Loco and the pickle dog, and they were both spectacular. 100% recommend.
His wife had a child.
We popped into Notch Brewing in Salem for a late night drink and bite to eat, and their pretzels were amazing. They had a couple of little bar bites, and they had a lot of Czech beers, which was really cool. So it was a nice way to end our night in Salem before heading to another location the next day. Cheers! The next morning, we met some friends at Ellie's farmhouse for breakfast. I had an amazing Reuben omelet and sausage gravy and biscuits, and I don't remember what Monica had, but I think she really liked her food as well. And now we're going to be driving north into New Hampshire to ride along the Kank this day. Please enjoy a bunch of random stops along the Kank Highway with occasional glimpses of Monica. Because we're all new here, we haven't had a chance to cover who Monica and I are and what we do, but I am a full-time tour guide, and this is a spot on the Kank where I take some groups, and I really like it, and the guests that I take here really love it as well. And part of this trip was for me to research places that I go in New England that I don't usually get to go when I have groups, such as the place we went for dinner, which was the Sea Dog Brewing Company. I had some really great tasters, including a pumpkin ale and a hazelnut porter that was amazing. I also had blueberry wings and a blueberry vinaigrette on my salad, and Monica had a steak poutine with Brussels sprouts that was also spectacular. So it was really nice to be able to go here when I don't have groups with me. And there's a shot of us on the Kank just enjoying our day. So good night, New Hampshire, and the next morning is going to be heading to Maine. So the wave got me a little bit right there, which was my own fault, but I was wearing my bean boots, so I was actually okay. It just got my feet wet a little bit. And this is the day that we went up to Maine and did some exploring. We'll let you know the places we are, but we were joined by Megan the Stitcher and Marcie from YouTube. We stopped in Ogunquit after we went to Nubble Light so that we could walk along the Marginal Way, which goes along the coastline, and it was a beautiful walk. We honestly could have spent our whole day just stopping and sitting along there and watching the sea, but of course we wanted to make our way to Portland eventually to check out Portland. We'll tell you more about Portland in a little bit, so enjoy these scenes from along the Marginal Way. So here's a really sad story. I love seafood, lobster, shrimp, etc., but I might be becoming allergic to them in my old age. So I need to take an allergy test, and we stopped at this really great place called Footbridge Lobster, and everyone else got lobster grilled cheese, and it looked spectacular, and they confirmed, and I had to get fish and chips. But the fish and chips was still really amazing. I'm just very sad that on our trip to Maine I could not have lobster or clam chowder. After Ogunquit, we headed up to Portland, Maine, and our first stop was the Portland Headlight in Cape Elizabeth. It was beautiful. We had an amazing sunset. We were actually kicked out of the park by the ranger because they were closing the gates right at sunset, so we grabbed a few shots and then headed over to Portland proper. Now, the downside with Portland proper was that it was a ghost town. It took us forever to find an open cafe to get a coffee and to use the restroom, and we decided just to walk along a little bit before we headed out of town, and we found this shop right here where everything is made by Maine locals, and the guy that owned the place was extremely nice and made this amazing video of us that makes us laugh every single time that we see it. So definitely head there and give him your business. Maine is known for Whoopie Pies, and we wanted to try some, of course, so we asked the fine folks at the Maine souvenir shop where we could find them, since, like we said, everything in Portland was closed, and they recommended Becky's Diner, so we got these pumpkin chocolate chip and plain chocolate ones, and they were delightful. Here's me looking real sad that the Holy Donut was closed, which was one of the places that I wanted Monica to try, but luckily our friends at the Maine souvenir shop came in clutch and told us that we could probably find them at the nearby supermarket, and we did. I also snagged this delicious witch's brew at the supermarket, and by the way, those candy corns were turkey dinner flavored, and they were gross, but also good at the same time, somehow. For dinner, Marcie took us to this really great taco place in her barrio called Barrio, and we had this really great green bean casserole queso and a Thanksgiving dinner taco. Again, I don't remember what anyone else had, but those are what I had, and they were spectacular, even though they sound kind of weird. Adios, Portland! We're heading to Lake Winnipesaukee. Lake Winnipesaukee is one of the places that I take my groups on tour, but we never get to go to Meredith, which is this town that we're in right here. When we were in Meredith, we walked along the sculpture garden pathway. It probably has an official name, and that's not it, but we saw some cool sculptures, and I'll throw in some photos of those. And then eventually we did make our way to Wolfboro, which is where we disembark from the Mount Washington when I'm there with my groups. We stopped at this brick oven place in Wolfboro and had a nice meal. I had this blueberry beer. Yes, that's a horse behind Monica. That's the horse that you saw earlier in the water. And this calzone was amazing, but it gave me heartburn for the rest of the day.
Is that a pumpkin? Does that look like a pumpkin to you?
I see what you're saying.
You're like, no.
Yeah, fishy, fishy, fishy.
There are giant fish in here.
There are giant fish. Do you own the fishing poles?
No.
Too bad.
We do not.
And with that sunset, we said goodbye to Lake Winnipesaukee and went back to sleep. And the next morning we headed for home. We stopped at Costco and got some chicken bakes because we are classy like that. Then we hit Pennsylvania and rode off into the sunset the rest of the way home to rest up for our next adventure. We hope to see you then.